Ronnie Dyson wasn't just a one-hit wonder. He was a star whose career was sabotaged before he could reach his full potential. With a voice that could have defined an era, he had everything needed for lasting success.
The song was written for me. They didn't have anything for me to do in the show, and so they wrote that song for me and it became quite a hit.
Yet, Ronnie Dyson's career was cut short before he ever got the chance to truly shine.
You've done an awful lot very early. Do you mind if I ask you how old are you?
22.
From his Broadway breakthrough to his chart-topping hit, Dyson had everything needed for lasting success. His voice was unmatched, his talent undeniable. But in an industry where careers are carefully controlled, not everyone gets to stay in the spotlight. Was he pushed aside by industry giants who saw him as a threat? Did record labels set him up to fail? Or was he simply never meant to win in a game rigged against him? Ronnie Dyson's journey to fame was nothing short of remarkable. Born in Washington, D.C. in 1950, he grew up surrounded by gospel music, singing in church like so many legendary black artists before him. But unlike most, Dyson's talent wasn't just good. It was undeniable. His voice had a rare purity, an effortless falsetto that could soar through a song with emotion and control. At just 18 years old, Dyson landed the kind of opportunity that most aspiring singers could only dream of: a leading role in the Broadway musical Hair. This was a game changer. Hair wasn't just any production, it was a cultural phenomenon, and Dyson's performance of Aquarius became one of the defining moments of the show. Audiences were captivated. His voice, filled with passion and youthful energy, made him stand out in a way that couldn't be ignored. With his Broadway success, a music career seemed like the next logical step. And sure enough, in 1970, he released his debut hit, If You Let Me Make Love to You, Then. Why Can't I Touch You?
If you let me make love to you, then why?
The song was a massive success, climbing to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. This wasn't just luck. Dyson had something special. His smooth, high-pitched voice set him apart from the deeper, grittier R&B voices of the time. It seemed like he was on his way to becoming a major star. But in an industry where uniqueness can be a threat, standing out isn't always an advantage. At this point, Dyson seemed poised for a long and successful career. But something changed. As quickly as he rose to prominence, his career began to unravel. Ronnie Dyson had something that set him apart from the rest. His smooth, soaring falsetto gave him a sound that was different from the deep, gritty voices dominating R&B at the time. While artists like Teddy Pendergrass and Barry White became the blueprint for success, Dyson's lighter, emotional tone made him a rare talent. But in an industry driven by trends, standing out can be dangerous. There have long been whispers that Dyson's career was intentionally stifled by bigger artists who saw him as a threat. At first, his success seemed undeniable. His first hit shot up the charts, proving he had what it took to compete. But when his second album didn't perform as well as expected, something changed. Instead of receiving support from his record label, Dyson found himself pushed to the sidelines. Columbia Records, which had once been eager to capitalize on his success, suddenly seemed uninterested. His albums weren't promoted the way his debut had been, and the industry machine that had helped launch his career was now working against him. Some insiders believe this was no accident. The music industry is notoriously cutthroat, and when new talent emerges, it can disrupt the balance of power. If Dyson had continued his rise, he could have taken the spotlight from bigger names. There are claims that more established artists, fearing competition, used their industry influence to keep him from reaching the top. Whether this was through quiet behind-the-scenes maneuvering or more direct interventions, the result was clear. Dyson was being pushed out. For Dyson, this shift was devastating. He had proven himself as a talent, but the moment his music didn't generate the same buzz as his first hit, the industry lost interest. Instead of being nurtured and given space to grow as an artist, he was treated as disposable. But it wasn't just industry politics that hurt Dyson's career. His own refusal to conform also played a role. Many artists in the 70s had to choose between sticking to their artistic vision or chasing commercial success. Dyson, true to himself, wasn't willing to change his sound just to fit industry trends. At the time, R&B was shifting. The rise of disco, funk, and deeper, more sultry voices meant that record labels were looking for a certain type of artist. Dyson's falsetto-heavy style wasn't what executives thought would sell the most records. Instead of embracing his uniqueness, they pressured him to adapt. Dyson, however, wasn't interested in being molded into something he wasn't. He wanted to create music that stayed true to his voice and artistic identity. But record labels don't invest in artistry. They invest in profit. His refusal to compromise meant he clashed with executives who wanted him to produce more marketable radio-friendly hits. As a result, he was given fewer opportunities. The label stopped pushing his music as hard, and by the time his 1979 album, If the Shoe Fits, failed to make a commercial impact, Columbia had made up its mind. He was no longer worth the investment.
If the shoe fits, dancing it.
Soon after, Columbia Records dropped him. Just like that, an artist who had once been celebrated for his talent was left without the support of a major label. It was a cruel reminder that in the music business, talent alone isn't enough. If you don't play by the industry's rules, you can be erased. This was a major turning point in Dyson's career. Without the backing of Columbia, he struggled to regain his footing. By the late 1970s, Ronnie Dyson was struggling to keep his career alive. His early success had faded, and after being dropped by Columbia Records, he found himself in an all-too-familiar position for artists who refused to conform. Alone, searching for the right team that believed in his talent. Desperate to regain his footing, Dyson turned to some of the biggest names in the industry for help. He worked with Tom Bell, a legendary producer responsible for crafting hits for groups like the Stylistics, the Delphonics, and the Spinners. Bell was known for his lush orchestral arrangements and his ability to create timeless, soulful music. The hope was that by teaming up with someone of Bell's caliber, Dyson could reignite his career and prove to the industry that he was still a force to be reckoned with. Their collaboration led to one of Dyson's most recognized songs, One Man Band Plays All Alone, which became a modest hit, making it onto the top 40 charts.
I depend on me myself to keep me company.
The song, filled with emotional depth and storytelling, showcased Dyson's signature falsetto and proved that his talent hadn't faded. For a brief moment, it seemed like Dyson was back. The song received airplay, and he found himself in the spotlight once again. But the success was fleeting. Despite working with one of the industry's most respected producers, Dyson struggled to secure a long-term place in the music business. Labels were hesitant to fully invest in him, wary that his style didn't fit the shifting landscape of R&B and soul. His collaboration with Tom Bell was short-lived, and instead of capitalizing on the momentum, the industry once again left Dyson behind. This wasn't unusual. The music industry is filled with stories of artists who, despite their raw talent, are seen as one-hit wonders or past their prime the moment they fail to deliver a blockbuster success. Dyson was one of those artists. Even though his voice was just as strong as ever, labels weren't willing to take a chance on him. By the early 1980s, Dyson was still determined to make music. He wasn't ready to give up, even though it was clear the industry had lost interest. In a bid to keep his career afloat, he signed with Cotillion Records, a subsidiary of Atlantic Records that had a reputation for working with soul and R&B acts. At first glance, This seemed like a promising opportunity. Cotillion had released albums by artists like Sister Sledge, Brooke Benton, and Donny Hathaway, all of whom had seen success under the label. But there was a problem. The music landscape was changing rapidly, and the soulful, ballad-driven R&B that had defined Dyson's career was no longer what record executives were looking for. The rise of funk, disco, and eventually synth-heavy 80s pop meant that labels were searching for artists who could deliver danceable, radio-friendly hits. Dyson's music, while still powerful, didn't fit the mold. He wasn't the type of artist who could easily pivot to a new sound just to stay relevant. His style was rooted in deep emotional storytelling and intricate vocal performances, qualities that were becoming harder to sell in an industry obsessed with the next big trend. His albums under Cotillion, Phase 2, 1982, and Brand New Day, 1983, did moderately well, but they failed to recapture the magic of his earlier work. Without major promotional backing, they didn't get the same level of attention as bigger releases from younger, trendier artists. The industry had moved on. Even though Dyson was still delivering quality music, he wasn't the fresh new star that labels wanted to invest in. His records weren't given the marketing push they needed to succeed, and without label support, it was nearly impossible for him to compete. At the same time, Dyson was facing personal struggles. The disappointment of being repeatedly pushed aside by the industry weighed heavily on him. After years of fighting for his place in music, it became clear that the doors were closing, and no matter how much talent he had, the industry wasn't willing to give him another chance. By the mid-80s, Dyson's career had faded into obscurity. He continued to perform when he could, but his days of charting hits were behind him. The same industry that once celebrated his unique voice had now discarded him, leaving him to navigate the next chapter of his life on his own. Ronnie Dyson's career was already struggling by the late 1970s, but what made things even worse was his declining health. He began experiencing serious heart problems, and as the years went on, his condition only got worse. For an artist whose entire life revolved around music, this was more than just a health scare. It was a devastating blow to everything he had worked for. Singing wasn't just a job for Dyson. It was his passion, his identity, and the one thing that had brought him success. But with each passing year, performing live became more and more difficult, and that spelled trouble for his career. In the music industry, staying relevant means staying active. Artists are expected to tour, promote their records, and make frequent public appearances to keep their names in the spotlight. Unfortunately, Dyson's declining health made it nearly impossible for him to maintain the demanding schedule that the industry required. He wasn't able to travel as much, he wasn't able to perform as often, and as a result, he began fading from the public eye. Rather than receiving support from the industry he had given so much to, Dyson was slowly pushed aside. In the eyes of record labels, artists are only as valuable as their ability to generate profit. The moment an artist is seen as a financial risk rather than an asset, they are often discarded without hesitation. Dyson was no exception. Once it became clear that he could no longer tour extensively or promote his albums the way he once had, record executives lost interest in him. They weren't willing to invest in an artist who wasn't physically able to keep up with the industry's relentless pace. And Dyson wasn't the only one. Many artists who experience health issues or other personal struggles find themselves abandoned by the very industry that once celebrated them. Music executives tend to focus on the next big thing, and once an artist is no longer considered marketable, they are quickly forgotten. Despite his years of hard work and undeniable talent, Dyson found himself in this unfortunate position. As if his health issues weren't enough, Dyson was also navigating an industry that was notorious for its harsh treatment of struggling artists. The 1980s were a particularly rough time in the music world, with drug use running rampant behind the scenes. In particular, was widely used among musicians, producers, and executives. Many artists fell into substance use, whether as a way to cope with the pressures of fame, financial struggles, or personal problems. There have been reports suggesting that Dyson may have used during this period, though how deeply he was involved is still unclear. Some believe that his drug use was a response to the stress of his failing career and worsening health. Others think he may have simply gotten caught up in the same party culture that affected so many artists at the time. What is certain is that Dyson's heart condition made him extremely vulnerable. Even occasional drug use could have put serious strain on his body, worsening his already fragile health. While his official cause of death was listed as heart failure, some speculate that substance abuse may have been a contributing factor. By the late 1980s, Dyson had almost completely disappeared from the mainstream music scene. His health continued to decline, and without the support of a major label, he had fewer resources to get the medical care he needed. This is a sad reality for many artists who, once their careers slow down, struggle to afford proper health care. In an industry that makes millions off its biggest stars, there is little safety net for those who fall on hard times. On November 10, 1990, at just 40 years old, Ronnie Dyson passed away from heart failure. His death was a tragic end to a career that had once held so much promise. While his cause of death was officially attributed to his heart condition, rumors of drug use lingered, leading some to believe that it may have played a role in his passing. Ronnie Dyson had all the makings of a superstar, an unmistakable voice, charting singles and collaborations with some of the biggest names in the industry. Yet, despite his talent, he never reached the level of fame achieved by artists like Donny Hathaway, Isaac Hayes, or Curtis Mayfield. Many factors contributed to this, but at the heart of it all was the way the industry treated him. One major issue was industry bias. Record labels often favored artists who fit neatly into mainstream R&B trends, and Dyson's distinctive falsetto and theatrical background set him apart in a way that executives didn't know how to market. While deeper-voiced singers like Teddy Pendergrass and Barry White were seen as symbols of masculine soul music, Dyson's style was different, more emotional, more vulnerable. Rather than embracing this uniqueness, the industry struggled to place him within the rigid expectations of the time. Another reason Ronnie Dyson never became a bigger star was bad marketing. Columbia Records signed him, but they didn't push him the way they did other artists. His early success should have been just the beginning, but instead of keeping up the momentum, the label seemed to move on. Without strong radio play and steady promotion, a lot of his later songs, good songs, got lost in the shuffle. In the music business, staying in the spotlight is everything. If people don't keep hearing your name, they forget you. Sadly, Dyson's label didn't put in the effort to keep him relevant, and that made it a lot harder for him to reach the level of fame he truly deserved. Additionally, Dyson faced typecasting from Broadway. His breakout role in Hair was both a blessing and a curse. While it introduced him to audiences, it also led some to dismiss him as just a theater singer rather than a serious R&B artist. Unlike traditional soul singers who emerged from gospel roots or the Motown system, Dyson's early career was tied to the stage, which made it difficult for him to shake that label. One of the biggest injustices to Ronnie Dyson's career is the one-hit wonder label. Even though he had multiple successful songs, most people only remember him for his 1970 hit, "If You Let Me Make Love to You, Then Why Can't I Touch You?" This song defined his career, but it also unfairly overshadowed his other work. Tracks like One Man Band, Plays All Alone, and The More You Do It, The More I Like It Done to Me charted and gained popularity, yet they never received the same recognition. Despite his talent and consistency, the music industry and the general public largely ignored the rest of his catalog, reducing him to just one song instead of celebrating his full career. Unlike many other artists who are rediscovered and celebrated posthumously, Dyson remains largely absent from discussions of R&B history. While names like Marvin Gaye and Luther Vandross are still widely praised, Dyson's legacy has faded into obscurity. The reason? The industry never fully embraced him in the first place. His refusal to conform to industry expectations, the lack of proper marketing, and possible sabotage from bigger names all contributed to his erasure from mainstream memory. Today, his music remains a hidden gem, appreciated by those who remember, but absent from the larger conversation of R&B's greatest voices. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.